There's a moment, somewhere between a breath in and a breath out, when the mind softens and the heart speaks louder. In that space, you can almost hear the truth you've been circling for years. What you've been chasing is already yours. Not in some distant future, not in a version of you that's better or more prepared, but here in the silent core of who you are. And yet I know the exhaustion you carry, the invisible weight of always trying, always pushing, always correcting yourself so the dream can finally come. You've read the books, watched the videos, repeated the affirmations, and still there's this quiet echo that says, why hasn't it happened yet? It's not because you're broken. It's not because you're missing something. It's because you've been taught to fight for what can only arrive when you rest into it. Neville Goddard called it living in the end, not as a technique you force yourself into, but as a return to your natural position as creator. Somewhere along the way, you learn to treat life like a battle, fighting the old reality, defending your dream from doubt, trying to overpower the world into agreement. But creation is not born from wrestling with what is. It emerges when you inhabit what will be, until it hardens into fact without your interference. A painter does not stand before the canvas wondering if the picture is possible. Before the first stroke, the entire work already exists inside them. Every color, every line, every shadow has already been lived in the mind, and so the hand moves without effort. This is not pretending. It's creation from the only place creation ever begins, within. And science affirms what the mystics have always known. Bruce Lipton reminds us that the subconscious mind governs 95% of our behavior. It is the silent executor, shaping our mornings, our choices, and our responses without us even noticing. When you impress it with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, it accepts that feeling as normal and begins to execute it automatically. The body moves differently. The words you choose shift. You notice opportunities where before you saw nothing. It's not magic. It's not coincidence. It's the natural alignment of who you've accepted yourself to be and what the world must now reflect back. So today, I invite you to lay down the fight, to stop running from your own power as if it's some fragile thing that might vanish, to stop treating your dream like an uncooperative stranger you have to convince. Living in the end is the most natural thing in the world because it's the only thing your soul truly recognizes as real. When you remember who you are, when you return to that inner state as if you never left, the strain dissolves, the waiting dissolves, and what's left is a quiet, steady knowing. The end is already alive in you, and you are simply allowing it to arrive. There is a particular kind of fatigue that doesn't come from the body but from the mind. It's the heaviness of always reaching, always holding, always adjusting, as if the life you desire is a wild animal you must keep on a leash or it will run away. You may wake up each day with a silent pressure to stay positive, to monitor every thought, to defend your dream from the smallest shadow of doubt. And yet this very tension is the signal that you are not living in the end. You are still trying to get there. Neville Goddard turned this belief on its head. The more effort you feel you must exert, the further you are from the state itself. The fulfilled state is weightless. It is the soft exhale after a long breath, not the tight chest that wonders if it's doing enough. Think of a rope in your hands pulled taut by some invisible force on the other end. You believe that if you let go, everything will fall apart. But in truth, the rope connects you only to the old reality, the one you've been wrestling with for years. Every pull keeps you locked into a contest that cannot bring you what you want, because what you want does not live on the other side of resistance. It lives in the moment you drop the rope. Feel that in your body, the sudden absence of strain, the arms lowering, the space in your chest opening. Creation flows through that space. When you stop trying to overpower what is, you step into what will be. The shift is not in force but in identity. You are no longer the one attempting to change circumstances. You are the one who simply lives from the new fact. Just as an actor doesn't strain to believe they are the character, but inhabits the role so fully that even offstage, their gestures and tone carry the truth of it, you too can dissolve the line between imagining and living. The scene you hold within becomes as real to you as the ground under your feet, and in that quiet certainty, effort is replaced by inevitability. Identity over willpower. There is a difference between holding on to a state with sheer force and simply being it. Willpower belongs to the realm of struggle. It is the constant watchfulness, the measuring of your own performance, the mental reminders to stay positive, even when your inner world feels unsettled. This approach may bring short bursts of alignment, but it cannot sustain the vibration of the wish fulfilled. Why? Because willpower runs out. It is a muscle that tires. But identity is who you are, even when you are not thinking about it. Neville Goddard spoke to this truth when he said that you do not need to maintain the end. You are the end. When you live from the end, it is no longer something you try to hold in place. It becomes the invisible foundation of every breath, every choice, every gesture. You are not waking up wondering how to keep it alive. You are waking up in it, moving through your day as one who already possesses what they once sought. There is no act to remember, no role to force. It has fused with you. Consider an actor who prepares for a demanding role. The greatest performances are not achieved by thinking constantly, "I must be this character." The actor allows the role to sink beneath the surface until their mannerisms, posture, and even the way they breathe naturally reflect it. They do not need to perform, they simply are. In the same way, when you inhabit the self that already lives in your fulfilled desire, you stop rehearsing abundance and begin breathing it. You stop trying to convince the world, or yourself, and start existing as the one for whom the desire is already fact. When identity shifts, everything else follows without the strain of control. The decisions you make, the opportunities you recognize, the way you carry yourself all begin to align with the new self-image. It is not about forcing your mind to remember a truth. It is about becoming the truth so completely that forgetting it is impossible. You will find that the more you let go of maintaining the state through effort, the more effortlessly the state maintains you. There is a quiet and subtle barrier that often goes unnoticed. The voice of logic, speaking with the tone of reason, yet serving as the gatekeeper of the old reality. It tells you why things cannot happen yet, why more steps are needed, why the timing isn't right, why the evidence must come first. On the surface, this sounds responsible, rational, even protective. But beneath it lies a simple truth. As long as you require reasons to believe you are still living outside the fulfilled desire, the mind becomes a courtroom, and your dream is on trial, always needing proof before it can be allowed to exist. Neville Goddard understood this and offered the simplest yet most radical antidote: assume the end without conditions. Logic will say, "But how will it happen?" And the fulfilled self will answer, "It already has." Logic will demand visible signs, and the fulfilled self will rest in invisible certainty. This is not carelessness. It is mastery over the old pattern that insists on the sequence of cause and effect. In truth, you are reversing the sequence, beginning with the effect in imagination so that the cause appears in form. There is a powerful shift that happens when you ask yourself, if it were already done, how would I feel right now? This question bypasses the logical mind and invites you directly into the emotional signature of the end. You may notice your shoulders lower, your breath deepen, a quiet ease moving through your body. That is the state where creation begins, not in the endless negotiation with facts, but in the silent acceptance of what is already true within. Logic serves the world you can measure, but manifestation begins in the world you can feel. To live in the fulfilled desire, you must be willing to let logic take the passenger seat while faith and imagination drive. This is not a rejection of reason, but a recognition that reason can only confirm what already exists. And when the state has become your dwelling place, logic will eventually find all the proof it was waiting for. Not because you convinced it, but because you lived beyond it until the proof appeared. Beneath every thought you choose and every action you take, there is a deeper current moving you, the subconscious mind. Bruce Lipton's research reminds us that this unseen layer governs 95% of our behavior. It is not a passive storage of memories and habits. It is the silent executor, carrying out the programs impressed upon it, whether they serve you or not. This is why change often feels elusive. You may consciously want something, but if the subconscious holds a different image of who you are, it will continue to recreate that version in your reality without resistance or question. Neville Goddard knew this truth long before science gave it language. His teachings reveal that the subconscious accepts as fact whatever feeling you consistently dwell in. It does not argue, it does not negotiate. Once you impress it with the end state, not as a wish, but as a lived inner reality, it begins to rearrange your world to match. This is not force. It is not about keeping constant watch over your mind. It is about allowing the desired state to sink in so deeply that it becomes the unquestioned baseline of your being. One of the most potent moments to engage this silent executor is in the space just before sleep. In that twilight of consciousness, when the critical mind grows quiet, the subconscious is most receptive. 5 minutes spent immersed in the fulfilled scene, feeling the warmth of it, hearing the sounds of it, breathing inside it, can reach the layers that daytime effort cannot touch. Over time, this nightly saturation rewrites the default settings of your identity, so that you begin to wake as the one who already has, rather than the one who is still striving. When the subconscious accepts a new truth, it does not ask for reminders. It does not need your constant supervision. Just as the body digests food without your instruction, the subconscious begins to carry out your inner assumption without struggle. Your words shift. Your posture changes. You recognize opportunities you once overlooked. It is not a sudden miracle. It is the quiet, inevitable unfolding of a self-image that has finally been aligned with your desire. And when that happens, the world has no choice but to follow. If living in the end felt effortless, would you allow it now? Check the pinned comment and see why it already can. There is a quiet irony in the way we sometimes approach change. We believe that by fighting against what we don't want, we weaken it. Yet the truth is the opposite. Every time you struggle with an unwanted condition, you pour attention into it, and attention is nourishment. The more you wrestle with what you dislike, the more rooted it becomes, because you are keeping it alive in your awareness. In the language of manifestation, resistance is not the absence of desire. It is the act of energizing the very reality you wish to leave behind. Neville Goddard taught that you cannot remove the old by opposing it. You can only replace it by inhabiting the new. To resist the unwanted is to continually affirm its presence. It is like watering weeds while ignoring the seed you planted. You may not intend to feed them, but the act of returning to them, thinking about them, discussing them, feeling their weight, keeps them flourishing. The law of consciousness responds not to what you reject, but to what you accept as real within yourself. The shift comes when you starve resistance and feed the inner scene instead. This is not a denial of what appears before your eyes, but a decision to anchor yourself in the unseen truth that you have chosen. You do not need to fix the old reality. You allow it to fade by no longer sustaining it with your focus. Just as a new plant will overtake the ground when tended consistently, your chosen state will quietly replace the old when it becomes the center of your inner life. This is why the fulfilled desire must be felt as often and as richly as possible, without the interference of checking, questioning, or measuring progress. Every time you step into the inner scene, every time you feel its texture and warmth, you are giving life to the only reality you wish to know. And just as surely, every time you return to the battle with what is, you are delaying the moment it dissolves. The choice moment by moment is not between wanting and not wanting, but between feeding what is past and feeding what is already yours within. Emotional consistency beats mental control. Many people approach manifestation as though the mind is the primary engine, thinking they must hold only positive thoughts, policing each idea that passes through their awareness. But thoughts, however disciplined, cannot override a contradictory emotional state. You may repeat affirmations, visualize perfectly, and still feel an undercurrent of doubt or unworthiness. And it is that emotional signature, not the polished thought, that the subconscious takes as truth. The vibration you live in consistently is far more influential than the words you say occasionally. Neville Goddard emphasized that the feeling of the wish fulfilled is the secret. This feeling is not a burst of excitement that fades when circumstances seem uncooperative. It is a steady inner climate. Just as the body has a resting temperature, the soul carries a resting vibration. And when that vibration matches your fulfilled desire, outer reality begins to rearrange itself in alignment. It is not the occasional high that shapes your world, but the state you return to again and again without forcing it. There is a quiet power in sustaining the emotional tone of the desired reality until it feels ordinary. This does not mean holding a constant intensity of joy, but rather living in the gentle certainty that you already are who you wish to become. For some, this shift has led to life changes that appeared without fanfare, almost as though the world was simply catching up. A person may move cities, meet a partner, or step into a financial flow, not from straining for proof, but from months of carrying the inner sensation of, already home, already loved, already abundant. When your emotions stabilize in the frequency of the end, the mind no longer needs to control or micromanage the process. Thoughts become cooperative instead of combative. Inspiration arises naturally, not as a demand. And what once felt like a battle to stay in the right mindset becomes a simple act of living in the emotional truth you have chosen. The mind follows where the heart rests. The body acts in harmony with what it feels to be real. And reality mirrors back not the effort of control, but the ease of consistency. World reflects, never leads. It is one of the most persistent illusions. The belief that the outer world must change first before you can feel different inside. This way of living keeps you in a constant state of waiting, because the outer world can only ever mirror what you already hold within. To expect it to lead is to stand before a mirror, frowning at your reflection, and insisting that it smile first. The reflection cannot move ahead of you, it is bound to follow. Neville Goddard taught that the world is nothing more than yourself pushed out. Every circumstance, every encounter, every repeated pattern is a projection of the inner state you have accepted as true. This is not a theory to be debated, but a law to be lived. When you understand that nothing external has the power to initiate your change, you stop chasing conditions and start shaping them at their source within consciousness. Life is generous with reminders, even if they are not always comfortable. A delay, a rejection, an unexpected challenge can all serve as mirrors, showing you where you have stepped out of alignment with your chosen state. These are not punishments, but reflections, and when you see them as such, you are no longer a victim of circumstances but a participant in creation. You recognize that the same way a mirror cannot alter your appearance without your movement, the world cannot alter without your shift in being. When you begin to use every outer event as a cue to re-enter your inner reality, the mirror becomes an ally rather than an obstacle. You are no longer waiting for proof to feel fulfilled. You are carrying fulfillment so steadily that proof becomes unavoidable. And in this way, the outer world stops feeling like a gatekeeper to your desires and starts revealing itself as a faithful echo of the self you have already chosen to be. Stop waiting. Start being. Waiting is one of the most subtle forms of postponement. It dresses itself as patience, but beneath it often lies the belief that what you desire is not yet yours. You watch for signs, measure the days, and check for progress as if your fulfillment is traveling toward you from some far distance. Yet every moment spent in not yet mode is a moment lived outside of the reality you seek. Neville Goddard made it clear, the state of waiting is the state of lacking, and the law can only bring you more of what you are being now. There is a collapse of time that occurs when you inhabit the end completely. In that state, you are no longer the person striving to reach a goal. You are the person for whom the goal is already a fact. The shift is quiet, but absolute. Your speech changes, your choices shift, and the energy you carry begins to signal to life itself that you are no longer on the path toward your desire, but living from it. This is why those who deeply embody their wish fulfilled often see changes appear without the strain of pursuit, because reality is simply catching up to the state they already occupy. Imagine living an entire day as your fulfilled self. Not pretending, not performing, but breathing, speaking, and moving as one who is already complete. The world may not yet have rearranged itself fully, but the inner world will have transformed. And when the inner world transforms, the outer has no choice but to follow. In this way, each moment ceases to be a countdown to a future event and becomes a living expression of the desired reality. When you stop waiting, you stop affirming absence. When you start being, you affirm presence. And presence is the only time and place in which creation can occur. The fulfilled version of you does not look for signs. It is the sign. And from that vantage point, what you once longed for becomes simply the natural outpicturing of the self you have decided to embody. Creation in imagination has its own intelligence. Once you have formed a clear inner scene that implies your wish fulfilled, your role is to let it breathe, to allow it to settle into the deeper layers of consciousness without constant interference. Yet many fall into the habit of revisiting the scene with the urge to adjust, correct, or evaluate it. This is like planting a seed and digging it up each day to check its progress. The constant handling disrupts its ability to take root. Neville Goddard emphasized the importance of choosing one simple scene that would exist if your desire were already a fact, and then replaying it in your mind without alteration. It is the emotional permanence of the scene that impresses the subconscious, not the variety or complexity of its details. When you keep reimagining or refining, you keep the desire in a state of becoming rather than being. But when you return to the same scene with the same feeling, you deepen its imprint until it becomes the unquestioned reality of your inner world. Think of baking bread. Once the dough is placed in the oven, the heat begins its invisible work. If you keep opening the door to check or reshaping the dough midway, you lose the steady environment it needs to rise. In the same way, your mental scene requires a period of undisturbed consistency. The less you tamper with it, the more naturally it will integrate into your identity, until it no longer feels like a scene you visit but a life you inhabit. Letting the scene play without editing is an act of trust. Trust in the law, trust in your imagination, and trust in the self you have chosen to be. It signals to the subconscious that there is nothing left to fix, nothing left to clarify. The moment you stop remaking it is the moment you begin to live from it. And from there, the external world begins its quiet work of rearranging itself to match the reality you have already accepted within. Naturalness is the final proof. There is a moment in every fulfilled desire when you no longer think of it as a desire. It has slipped quietly from the category of something I want into something that simply is. This shift into naturalness is the surest sign that manifestation is inevitable. Neville Goddard often said that the day you stop wondering when it will happen is the day you have truly entered the state. The questioning mind relaxes, and the feeling of normalcy takes its place. Naturalness does not mean indifference, and it does not mean forgetting your dream in the sense of losing it. It means you have worn it inwardly so often, so vividly, that it no longer feels like an addition to your life. It feels like life itself. The emotions around it are steady and unforced. You do not check for its arrival because in your inner world it is already present. This is when the subconscious has fully accepted the new identity, and your actions, words, and perceptions flow from it without deliberate effort. Consider the times in your life when something once seemed extraordinary but later became normal. A new home, a relationship, a job. At first it may have felt thrilling and unfamiliar. Over time it simply became part of your rhythm, something you move through without constant attention. Your desires follow the same path when fully embodied. They shift from feeling like a peak experience to feeling like a steady horizon. This is the mark that the state is complete. When a goal has become natural to you, the outer world's confirmation is just a reflection of what you already know to be true. You do not cling to it, you do not rehearse it, and you do not try to hold it in place. It lives in you as an effortless fact, and in that naturalness the law moves without resistance. The extraordinary becomes ordinary, and in that ordinariness lies the real magic, the quiet, unshakable knowing that it could never be otherwise. Rest in the end, it will take care of the means. There comes a point in this journey where you are no longer chasing, no longer searching, and no longer questioning the path ahead. You stand at a place within yourself that feels still, yet immeasurably alive. This is the place Neville Goddard spoke of when he said, "The end is the law. The means will arrange themselves." It is the recognition that once you have claimed the end as a living truth within, life itself begins to weave the steps, not because you force it to, but because it has no choice. The pattern was set the moment you embodied it. Resting in the end is not inaction, though to the logical mind it may appear so. It is the highest form of action, because it is the action that takes place in the invisible, in the inner workshop where reality is born. It requires an unwavering decision to remain in the state of fulfillment, without bending to the old habits of doubt or control. This rest is not the passivity of waiting for something to happen. It is the poise of knowing it already has. From this poise, every movement you make in the outer world flows from alignment rather than anxiety. Bruce Lipton's work in cellular biology offers the scientific mirror to this truth. He teaches that once the subconscious mind accepts a new program, it runs that program automatically, without effort, without delay. Just as your heart beats without your conscious command and your lungs draw breath without constant instruction, your subconscious executes the inner pattern it has been given. When you have impressed it with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, it begins to work in subtle, seamless ways to align your external conditions to match that inner state. You may find yourself speaking words you did not plan, making choices that feel effortless, or walking into encounters that seem almost too perfectly timed to be accidental. These are not coincidences. They are the means taking form. Imagine a thermostat in a quiet room. You set the temperature, and the system engages without fanfare, making micro-adjustments until the air matches your chosen setting. It does not require you to check it every few minutes or remind it of the target. Even when the temperature fluctuates, the system corrects itself automatically. In the same way, when you set your inner state to the reality you have chosen, life adjusts itself toward that state, not through force, but through natural response. It may call forth people, opportunities, or ideas you had never considered, each one a thread in the weaving of the means. But here is the subtle challenge. To rest in the end, you must release the need to control the how and when. This is where many struggle because the mind is conditioned to believe that control ensures security. It wants to map every step, anticipate every outcome, and guard against every possible delay. Yet in doing so, it unconsciously affirms the absence of what you desire, because it treats it as something that must be built piece by piece rather than something already complete in the unseen. Resting in the end asks you to trade the comfort of control for the certainty of faith. It invites you to live in the end so fully that the means feel less like construction and more like discovery. When you truly rest in the end, you are not concerned with whether the conditions around you reflect it yet. You understand that outer reality is always in motion, catching up to the inner truth you have established. You no longer measure time by the absence of results but by the deepening of your embodiment. Each day becomes an expression of the state you have chosen, and in that expression, the next step reveals itself without struggle. You might find that what once felt urgent now feels inevitable, and in that inevitability is a calm strength that cannot be shaken. This state of rest is not about ignoring the physical world, but about moving through it as one who is already whole. Your conversations, your decisions, even the way you hold your body begin to carry the quiet authority of fulfillment. You may notice that people respond to you differently, that opportunities open without you forcing them, and that solutions appear to problems you once thought impossible to resolve. All of this unfolds because you are no longer trying to make it happen. You are living as the one for whom it already has. If you wish to test this, you do not need to begin with grand transformations. Choose a desire and wear it inwardly as if it were already your reality. Feel the subtle changes in how you think, speak, and move. Watch how the world bends, often in imperceptible ways at first, to meet you there. The more you embody it without checking or adjusting, the more rapidly the means align, because you have removed the only real obstruction, the vibration of waiting. For the next 7 days, live as though the end is not something you are moving toward, but something you have already stepped into. This is not pretending, it is aligning. It is choosing presence over postponement, embodiment over effort. Each time you feel the pull to measure progress or question timing, return to the quiet, knowing that the means are none of your concern. They are already in motion. Rest in the end and let the means catch up. They always will because they are born from the state you hold, and when that state is unshakable, the outcome becomes not a matter of if, but a matter of when. And in the stillness of this rest, you realize that when has already begun. It began the moment you decided to be the one who already is. And if you want to take what you've just felt here even deeper into your own life, there's something waiting for you in the pinned comment. It's there for a reason, because right now is the moment you're most ready to see it.